That was Joe Biden's smile when he was younger, right? He was actually smiling with that aggressive look, like, ah. Look at Joe Biden's body language. He looks like a totally different person, even just facial structure. I would even argue that dementia is the reason why Joe Biden was elected president. Welcome back to the Schaik Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Van Schaik, and no co-host, of course. And if we have a visiting podcast, then maybe the person I'm visiting, they could be a guest on the podcast. But for now, it's just me. And what we want to do is we want to talk more about the main channel video. And the main channel video that we put out, that if you saw, was Joe Biden and dementia. And he's basically the poster child of dementia, especially him being so worldwide known and seen. And it's obvious that something's going on with him, and it appears quite obviously to be dementia. So it's just one of those things that is actually quite sad. So yeah, let's get right into your comments. Jim Evans writes his wife works with dementia patients, and it's really sad for the family, and the initial phases are really hard to deal with. Like I said in the main channel video, it is really sad for all the loved ones when someone does have dementia. And it's also really hard for, I think, the person who has dementia to acknowledge and for them to actually accept it too. I think it's just so much more convenient and easier and less painful for the patient, the dementia patient, to just pretend that he or she doesn't have dementia, to just be in denial that they have dementia. And one of the things is actually forgetting the things that they are doing that are dementia-like, you know, whether it's leaving their keys in the microwave. I mean, that's very, very common, right? Putting objects where they wouldn't normally put the object. It's very common of dementia, you know? So when they open up the microwave to put their soup in to the microwave, they find their keys there, and they say, oh, how did they get there? And they just put them away, you know, maybe somewhere else. But then, you know, when maybe their family would approach them and say, hey, we're noticing some things, blah, 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 the patient wouldn't remember necessarily, or very well at least, that they put their keys in the microwave and done other things that are symptoms of dementia. It's really hard for a family to specifically get their loved one to acknowledge that maybe it is a problem. And it's really hard on the family too, not only having to manage someone with dementia, but also coming to the realization that their loved one will be forgetting them in a matter of years. And when they see them, they just won't recognize them, which is really sad. When the person is diagnosed with dementia, they are fully aware of what dementia is, and to hear that news is just really, really traumatic. I mean, imagine that you're diagnosed, God forbid, with dementia. What does that mean? That when you see your loved ones, you just won't recognize them. You won't recognize them. You won't remember some things, and they will slowly fade away from your memory. And it's kind of like a slow, painful, emotional death. You're losing a loved one slowly and painfully and emotionally. Maybe they're still physically around, but when they see you, they just don't recognize you. They don't remember certain things. They don't remember the last time they saw you. I mean, it's just really sad. It's a really terrible, terrible illness. And actually, scientists are kind of working towards a vaccine. There's a lot of promising news coming out of the scientific world on vaccines that can prevent illnesses like Alzheimer's. So that is really promising and really hopeful that we can possibly get to a point where it's quite limited. I kind of relate Joe Biden at this point and in this stage of his career to something very similar to taking grandpa's keys away. I kind of look at it like that. So, and that's like car keys away specifically. So this is kind of like, you know, taking Joe Biden's key to the Oval Office away. What really needs to happen at this point, given his status and given what's going on, I think his cabinet needs to come together and needs to have an intervention with Joe Biden and needs to say to him, hey, what needs to happen here is we need an independent specialist, give you a cognitive test and see where your cognition is. And based on that, then they can decide on whether Joe Biden should be president still right now, or if maybe he can kind of wait it out a little bit for another year. I would guess probably not. If he takes a cognitive test, he probably is going to fail it. So I think that. But give him a test, see what it is, and I think then the cabinet can say, hey, make a decision. And if they think that he should leave and Joe Biden doesn't think that he should leave, then in that case, then they're probably going to have to invoke the 25th Amendment and get him out. It's just really, really sad, especially to have the leader of the free world. And yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, handlers of Biden and people to kind of show him around. And he has a lot of note cards with things to do, such as you enter the room and you say hello and you sit down. Like, that was just, I couldn't believe that he actually had a card like that. That's how progressed his dementia is. This is not anything like, oh, what's going on today? I forgot what's going on. No. This is literally, he forgets the most basic things of how to be president, such as meet somebody and say hello and sit down. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. There's no other word for it. That's how progressed it seems his dementia is. But you don't know until he gets a test. But I presume that he's going to fail it if he does take any type of test, which is probably why we saw him try to avoid any test and said, oh, I wouldn't take a cognition test. Why would I take something like that? Poker King 1993 writes, Congress and the executive branch are mostly just a retirement home at this point. A retirement home who demands us to listen to their ideas and their declining health. Yeah, that's pretty true. There's so many people. There are so many people in Congress and in high levels of government that just don't want to step down because they're just too egotistical a lot of times. I think basically as soon as you kind of get to 80, there has to be a limit here. And I think it's good for the country to bring in new people that are going to be around when we're all around, and they're not going to likely die in less than 10 years possibly. We really have to have new people in here, and it's really annoying when, just the same old people run for president, run for office, run for speaker, and run for Congress, whatever it is. Government should be a service to the people, okay? And yes, there is some benefit of being a veteran in government and being within government and having good experience to guide, some branches of government. Sure. But there's also a balance here. At some point, yes, they have a lot of experience, but they're likely forgetting all of the experience because they're getting so old that they're likely having some form of dementia as they're getting older. They're just not as sharp. Even just the most healthy 80-year-old is not as sharp as he was when he was 30. He's just not. He can be relatively sharp, but he's just not as sharp. And most of the time, there's going to be some form of dementia going on, and they're going to be forgetting a lot of their experience. So saying that they have experience, like 50 years experience, I don't think that's 50 years experience if you forgot 30 of it. So you really just have 20. And maybe even less of that, because if you forget how to do the most basic things, such as sit down, say hello, ask a question, then yeah, there's a bigger problem here that, they don't have, 50 years experience. No, they don't even have 20 years. They don't have 2 years of experience. They can't even remember to go and say hello. Come on. I just really think that there should be a understood agreement among people that, hey, it's time to step down generally when you're about 80 years old. I think that's generally the cutoff. Maybe there should be a hard and fast line if Biden ends up doing something extremely regrettable. But, as of right now, I think there should be just general agreements that, hey, after 80 years old, just go and live your days on a beach. Don't you want to do that instead of bicker with, the media and the other party? Come on. Just let it go. Do the right thing and just step down. Actually think of some other people other than yourself. That's what I would say. There's so many capable people. It's not like there aren't capable people. It's not like there aren't capable people that are more than willing and able to fulfill those roles with even better new ideas that aren't stuck in the past. And yet they insist on just staying where they are, holding onto power, desperately grasping and clasping onto it to make sure that they stay until their last dying breath. Think of the people that you're serving and do the right thing. Sakamoto writes, I love how unbiased this channel is. Body language cuts through all of that. Sometimes, but I'll assume the best of her and assume that she means well with that. And yes, at least the way that I perform my analysis, I view it as unbiased. I'm sure that I have my own personal biases that I try to eliminate and push aside when I'm doing any of this. But hey, it's human nature to have some bias. But again, like, I think that's also a point that I was making at the end of the video when I said, 99% of you are not going to be able to guess who I voted for president. Basically saying, I don't have a dog in this fight. My guy or girl, they didn't win. They didn't win the election, and they didn't have a shot at winning the election, the last election specifically. And that's my point. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't really care, clearly, because if I really cared that, I didn't want Biden or I wanted Trump or I wanted whoever like that had a real chance of winning, I would have voted for them. So that was really the point of me saying that at the end. And I will talk about that at some point coming soon. I'm having an idea for a video, a good conversation piece video we can make on that. Well, really a podcast on that. So stay tuned for who I voted for, if you care at all, which some of you don't, which is fine. But, given that I sometimes talk about political topics, specifically on my podcast, some of you may be interested. All right. The next comment here, Jeff AM 1986 writes, this is your most spot on and important video. This is so very serious and sad. Something must be done immediately. This isn't right on any level. Yes. I do agree. I think this was a quite important video. It's doing okay. I think it's, because it's political and because could be construed as one way, leaning one way in politics wise. I think it's being limited. I don't think it's necessarily being shadow banned, because I really know when it's being shadow banned. I don't think it's being shadow banned. I just think it's being limited, where it's just not given the full potential that I think it deserves. And we'll see if that opens up. My last Joe Biden video, where it was all on Joe Biden, and that was one that I called out a big lie that he was involved in there. That one did not start out doing very well. I think it had like about 20,000 views in about a week, and then slowly it started to get more and more. And then it found a crowd and it just blew up. And now it has, over 1 million, 1.4 million, I think, views. So I'm hoping maybe something like that will happen with this video. But yes, I think it's a very important video. I really wanted to just show you all and just show, the kind of the world of really what's going on. Because I think, we all live in our own social media bubble, we'll call it, because that's the reality of our world. It's all social media bubbles. Because I don't know if everyone fully knows that what you see is based on what you watch and what you like. So if you watch something and you thumb it up and you like it, you'll see more of that other people liked and watched and, were involved in and commented and watched a good amount of that video. So it's all catered to you. So if you tend to believe that maybe Biden may have some dementia, you will be presented likely, maybe not necessarily on YouTube, but maybe on other platforms, TikTok specifically, Instagram, you will be presented other videos like that. And unfortunately, anything that leans one way in politics I've noticed is being limited. And their rationale, I think, I don't agree with it, is that it's spreading false information, assuming that anything on that side, that one side on the right, is false information. And I would agree that some stuff on the right is false information, but I would also agree that some stuff on the left is false information. And who's doing more of it? That's up for the individual to decide. Venomous Goose writes, my grandma had dementia. She would introduce me to her grandson every so often. He was my brother. She would often say that she was talking with her cousins earlier in the day. They'd been dead for decades. Yeah, it's very sad. And it just gets worse. And that's the really sad part, that that it's just going to get worse. It's just going to keep on getting worse. And there's not much that someone can do. There's some medications that can help some of the symptoms and make it a little less, but the actual atrophy of the brain just keeps on getting worse. It doesn't get better. It doesn't plateau. So that's what we need to know when we're talking about Joe Biden, is that it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse, and there's not much that anyone can do that will prevent that from happening. And it's just a slow, painful death for everyone involved, emotionally for the family, emotionally for the individual who has the dementia, and also physically for the actual person who has dementia. It's just probably one of the worst types of deaths that I think you can imagine. Natural Ginger writes, it's not only his behavior for me, it's the look and gaze of his eyes. Yes, there was specific clips where you can just see he was just out of it. And if we look at clips of him when he was younger, Joe Biden younger, he was kind of like an asshole type guy, okay? And some people are going to, maybe politically partisan, he's always... No. He was a freaking asshole. He was not likable. People don't understand that about Joe Biden. When his natural self is not this old, quiet, calm guy who's just like, and just talking like the old grandpa as president. No. The actual Joe Biden that was in the U.S. Senate for, 50 years. Not 50 years, 40 years, I guess. That Joe Biden, he was a freaking asshole. He just reminded me of some asshole Wall Street ball buster. That's the kind of personality he had. He wasn't personable. He wasn't calm. He wasn't polite. He wasn't approachable. He was just in your face and just mean. He was just a mean mother. He was just a mean sucker. Totally different than the guy you see now, which I think the old grandpa aspect of his personality is probably the more appealing aspect. But yeah, when he was younger, he was just an asshole. He was that kind of guy that you wouldn't want to meet, you wouldn't want to talk to. To get elected president, you have to have some level of approachability. Joe Biden, when he was younger, he didn't have any approachability. Even when 2008, when he ran again and lost in the primary, and then eventually Barack Obama picked him up to be a more steady hand and more, I don't know how to describe Joe Biden, just more experienced figure on the ticket. But even in 2008, you watch his videos making speeches, he comes across as just a mean little fuck. He's really mean. He does not come across as a nice guy, even just looking at his body language. And you have to, give a pleasant smile, not just a smile. That was kind of Joe Biden's smile. If you're watching the podcast here on YouTube, if you're watching, that was his smile. That was Joe Biden's smile when he was younger, right? He was actually smiling with that aggressive look, like, Look at Joe Biden's body language. He looks like a totally different person, even just facial structure. I would even argue that dementia is the reason why Joe Biden was elected president. There's no way that this guy, this hard ass from Delaware, senator, snooty, tough ball buster senator, would ever get elected president. He's just not. And he was always like that. And he only started to not be like that when he started to get older and he started to apparently get some dementia. And it sounds terrible, but I really see that if it wasn't for dementia and actually having him come across as just a little more like a grandpa where someone could see him as a grandpa. And yeah, some people are going to say some things like, oh, what kind of grandpa? Yeah, I know. But just hear me out. Just like a grandpa as opposed to a ball-busting 40-year-old veteran U.S. senator. And there's Joe Biden's smile. Oh, I'm smiling at you. It's so over the top, and it shows like a lot of times all of his teeth and all of his bottom teeth even, and it comes across as kind of aggressive. It comes across as aggressive. People have to feel good when you smile at them, and if they don't feel good, you're kind of defeating the purpose, especially as a presidential candidate, of making people try to like you with a smile. He's not very likable with his smile. I would even argue that Joe Biden's smile was so off-putting that he was just so off-putting in 2008 and just not likable in 2008. That's why he only got, I think, like 3% of the vote when the primaries were going on. You would like hardly get any vote. And the type of memory that you would have of Joe Biden with a smile like that and the way he talked to you was very aggressive. And it wasn't very peaceful and calming. But I think as Joe Biden got older, it allowed him to play and kind of be a little more the grandfather figure and less of this hard-ass senator from Delaware. The capital of corporations, basically. That's where every corporation incorporates because there's tax benefits of incorporating in Delaware. You really don't get any more corporate than being a U.S. senator from Delaware. You're the most corporate of the corporate. And he had a hard time breaking from that, even just his personality. And it really took actually going to the White House with Barack Obama and being vice president for 8 years and just staying away from Delaware and being a senator of Delaware. And I think also, along with some dementia, unfortunately, it kind of resulted in the grandpa figure we know today. And not this Joe Biden that everyone feared and no one wanted to vote for or talk to or dare ask a question because he was going to give you that aggressive smile and was going to bust your balls because he is the Wall Street ball buster, U.S. Senator from Delaware for 40 years. Not a very appealing character he was. Anyway, that's what it was. But still very, very sad, of course, that Joe Biden is having some difficulty. And this goes beyond politics. Everyone is a person at the end of the day. Everyone has family at the end of the day. We can't always just look at what letter is underneath your name. Is it a D or an R? Which one are you? Republican or Democrat? Which one are you? What side are you on? Pick a side. Come on. Everyone is a person. Everyone has family. Everyone has loved ones. And I think it's important to remember that when we look at situations here, such as the situation with Joe Biden and dementia, that, he has loved ones. He has grandchildren. I think probably even has great-grandchildren at this point, maybe. He has loved ones that care for him. And, he's a person, he's one of God's children, right? He's one of God's children. You may not agree with him on anything or everything or nothing, or he's one of God's children first and foremost. And it's sad, first and foremost, that he is suffering through this and his family is going to be suffering through this as well, especially for any of you that may have had loved ones as well that have been suffering through dementia. It's not fun. It's very, very sad. It's emotionally taxing. And it's really one of the saddest ways to possibly go. It's not quick. And I think we all would rather have it quick and not be slow and painful. If you're not already subscribed to that Schaik podcast, give it a subscribe because we don't want to miss out on new podcasts on body language, behavior, and psychology. We are everywhere you get your podcast, including Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. You can watch the show on YouTube. Everywhere you get your podcasts, that's where you can get the podcast Shaked. That's what we got for you. More podcasts to come. See you at the top.